So I'm going to come down here because I think Joe has put forward the proposition about how we're going to take these things into government. The question is, should we in the first place? So I'm going to try to make the case to you that we should, and hopefully we can have some conversation about whether that's so, and if so, how. So as many of you know, I worked for the Obama administration at its outset. In the first 2 years of the administration, when Obama, as you know, on his very first day in office, signed the Memorandum on Transparency and Open Government, calling for a transformation in the way that we govern according to 3 values: transparency, participation, and collaboration. And some of that we've made really great strides on. And both here and in the US, we have made great advances in the move towards greater transparency, and particularly towards how we open up government data to put more data sets online, not only in our 2 countries, but of course now in over 60 countries around the world, where we have national government portals and lots of success stories to tell about the ways in which open data is helping government to work better, is helping to create jobs and promote entrepreneurship, and also helping citizens to make better choices. Where we've had less development, of course, is around the agenda, not of data.gov, but really what I would call people.gov. How we do engagement and how we make real those prongs of the agenda around participation and collaboration. So we have not really seen, I would put to you, a fundamental transformation in the relationship between citizens and the state. We're getting good at this data piece, but this part where we actually are engaging people in how we make policy and how we make decisions and how we solve problems is a lot less well developed. What we have done a good job of, in terms of asking people what they can do for their country, is asking them to share their opinions, right? So we have gotten good, whether it's through petitions in the UK or in the US, at asking people how they feel. Tell us what you think about an issue, and this has helped to bring to the fore what people care about in new ways than we've been able to do. But it is not, for those people who are policymakers in the room, we realize, very helpful to how we do their jobs. Getting a naked suggestion that we should deport Justin Bieber back to Canada, or that we should build a Death Star, the 2 most popular petitions on the White House website, are not necessarily conducive to improving how you do your jobs and improving outcomes in education and healthcare and justice and creating jobs in the economy. And that is because we need to go beyond simply asking people what they feel, and we're beginning to use technology to do so, to asking them to share what they know and what they're actually able to do. So we're seeing new examples over the last few years of actually getting people engaged in doing tasks, in doing things, contributing their time and their know-how. Just this past November in Sao Paulo, they turned the concept of civil service training on its head, and instead of having civil servants getting trained within professional civil service training institutes or coming to a place like the Institute for Government, they said to citizens, we know less about technology and innovation than you do. Why don't you teach us? And they created the open government, the Sao Paulo Aberta School, and asked citizens to volunteer, they're getting paid, but to create classes to teach civil servants technology and innovation. And they've started to train now 24,000 people within the government in new topics in technology and innovation. This kind of engagement also looks like not just getting people to give of their time, but getting people to give of their ideas, right? So it's not just opinions, but you can go now on Madrid's website and give know-how and skilled advice about how to improve Madrid's or create Madrid's new transparency law. In Paris, I can share my ideas with the mayor of the city. So we're seeing lots of examples now of going beyond this, just asking people what they feel, to getting people to do things in new ways. I very much got my start in doing this work now quite some time ago by creating the first system for the National Patent Office in the US, and we piloted this in the UK and Japan and elsewhere, which was asking volunteer scientists and technologists within industry and with academia to help share what they know with national patent offices to improve the process by which we examine patents. So recognizing that the best information not only sits within the bureaucracy, but is widely distributed out there, we developed a platform and a system to get people to share their know-how. Fast forward a few years to 5 years ago, and the US government rolls out challenge.gov, the prize-backed challenge platform, drawing, of course, on the famous Longitude Prize from Britain, and now 450 federal agencies have posted challenges asking citizens to do not the simple thing of saying what they feel about Justin Bieber or the Death Star, but to come up with hard and winning solutions to how do we remove salt from saltwater to improve farming. How do we reduce the word gap between the number of words a rich and a poor child hears before the time he or she is 5 years old? Hard problems which people have the know-how to solve. And of course, now we're seeing evidence of similar work going on in Europe. Just last month, the European Food Safety Agency closed a tender calling for better strategies for crowdsourcing expertise, not opinions, about how to improve reduce the risk of foodborne illness and improve food safety. But there's a challenge. There's a challenge to the way that we've been doing things that I would argue is fundamental to the reason why we don't see a radical transformation. And that is the problem of the open call. When we ran peer-to-patent, we had to spend all our time on marketing, if you will, on letting people know about the opportunity to participate. Last week, I was talking about citizen engagement at 2 major research universities, at an engineering faculty and at a law faculty. And I asked the students there, smart Ivy League students with all the advantages in the world, how many people had been on challenge.gov? Not a single hand had gone up. Nobody had even heard about it, despite the fact that I was sitting in a place where people had the know-how to contribute to making government work better. So we have this idea that smarter government can come, not just from data, and I want to recognize the amazing work that Paul Maltby has been doing in helping to bring more data into government and more evidence-based policymaking and the greater use of data to deliver policy and services, but how we do that also from citizens. And that's hard because it is about finding the needle in the haystack, finding the expertise that we need. It's hard because we are not used to, in the culture of government, asking a question and admitting the fact that we don't know. So if you're a programmer, you go on Stack Exchange along with millions of other people and you post a question which says, how do I find the line of code that allows me to do X, Y, and Z? But if you're in government, it's really hard to post a question, not only because it's antithetical to our culture, but also because what are you supposed to say? How do I reduce the backlog in veterans' benefits claims? How do I reduce the disparity in pay between men and women? It doesn't quite have the same level of granularity that lends itself to posting on Stack Exchange. How do we also increase the alacrity and the agility with which we're actually able to get expertise? So whether it's in Europe or in the States, the traditional way we do this is through the formation of advisory committees, right? So there are other vehicles as well, but just simply put, in the interest of time, we have both here and there 1,000 of these committees with 65,000, 70,000 people who serve on them. But if you take one example in our Ministry of Education, the advisory committee that's tasked with solving all of the issues around the financing of higher education has 11 people on it. And those 11 people have served on this committee with some change up since 1986. That is not exactly, and there's good reason for it, I might add, because we have these structures in place to ensure that these committees will be balanced in terms of representation, will be free from undue influence, will be transparent in the way that they work. But it's not the same as what I can do with a Stack Exchange, where I can post a question and get an answer in 3 seconds. And where if I come along later with the same question, I can type it into Google and find an answer. There's got to be a way of moving from the world of the open call, in which we do not get our expertise that we need, to the world in which we can actually do a better job of targeting the expertise that we need to solve problems. And I would say there is no more important opportunity for us today than to think about engagement not as a mass-based exercise of asking people what they feel, but to one in which we can actually imagine a world where we can find people who have the know-how that we need. So that when we have an emergency, and think about the Zika virus today, I can find the people who have expertise in dealing with a pandemic, or who've lived in Brazil, or who know something about neurology and microcephaly, where we can find the people who can do either the tasks that we need and provide the skilled know-how, or can provide the credentialed know-how that allow us to get answers to questions. This is, to put this in another way, something very familiar to everybody in business who thinks about the concept of audience segmentation, right? So if I am a marketer, if I sell toothpaste, I spend an awful lot of money on understanding when you are likely to buy toothpaste. You probably know a lot about how to get people to buy toothpaste. That's why you're successful. And the question is, how do we actually do more of that, both with citizens, but also with the civil service? And so both in Britain and in the US, President Obama, in unveiling his budget last week, and of course in myriad evolutions of the civil service reform plan here in the UK, there has been an emphasis in looking at what are the new strategies for segmenting our audience, first with the civil service, and then I would argue also eventually with citizens as well. So I want to just close with giving you a couple of examples of the ways in which we are beginning to do this, what some people call people analytics. We are using data to tap into what people know and to match the demand for that expertise. When we have the need for a doctor, HealthTap provides the supply of that doctor, right? So if I'm a middle-class mother and my child has a sniffle, I can pay 99 cents and go on HealthTap and get a doctor. And they're similarly doing this now for crises in the developing world. But what it's allowing us to do is to use technology to target what people know. This is not a conversation we could have had 10 years ago that we could have had 20 years ago. It's one that we can have today thanks to the evolution in technology that's allowing us to make more searchable and more findable the know-how and expertise that we have. So now, right, I can go on LinkedIn as 250 million other people do and post my credentials, and you can find them. So you can know that I have a law degree and some other degrees and whatever else it is that I've done. But I can also make manifest and searchable not just my credentials, but also my experience. So maybe I've written some code and I've posted a repository of that code on GitHub, or maybe I've actually won a contest, or maybe I won't go into the details of the work of Panos Iperotis, but it's fascinating work that demonstrates that people who have passion and interest in a specific topic, the kind of people who search on healthcare websites, turn out to also have a lot of expertise about these topics. So there are lots of ways now that we can make searchable and we can find what we know. So I want to skip, and those are not just credentialed forms of expertise, diplomas and degrees, but they are becoming more granular evidence, digital indicia, sometimes called badges, of what we know and can do that we can make searchable. So if I go to NYU's School of Professional Services and I take a degree in film production, I get a badge. And that badge I can post online and you can search for it. So that is enabling, again, not only me to show what I know, but you as a manager, as a decision maker, as somebody running an institution, to be able to search for it. So let me, So we can start to think about, and this is where I want to wrap up, is with a few examples of the way in which we are just beginning to be able to do more targeted searching, call it crowdsourcing wisely, what people within the civil service know and citizens know, again, sometimes based on credentials and sometimes based on experience and boots on the ground. It's essentially taking the idea that we know well from business in terms of customer segmentation, and we know even better from dating websites like Tinder or Match.com or any one of those, which is the ability to match people, right? That's what makes dating websites so successful. So what we need to think about is how do we do dating between government and citizens? How do we do dating? How do we match those needs and those questions with the people who have the credentials, the experience, and the passion to help? The Department of Defense, this is a project that has phased out and now been replaced, started a project about 5 years ago to use new data analytic capacity to actually track what the know-how is of people within the Department of Defense. So that instead of the opaque titles of manager and secretary and undersecretary and deputy this and that, you could actually find out who had experience flying the Apache helicopter and who would have the know-how that you needed to solve a problem. That original project has gotten phased out, but the new Secretary of Defense, Ash Carter, who started just a few months ago, announced on his very first day in office that in fact he was going to be launching a new Office of People Analytics and spreading this idea to all of the DoD so we could better do a job of networking what people know and can do. In our health ministry, we face the challenges every health ministry does of how do we efficaciously and quickly examine medical devices and drugs, get them to market quickly, but still protect lives. That has to be done by civil servants, and yet those devices are increasingly complicated. They're not just stents and plasters now, so they're apps and they're 3D printed tissue, this and that. And so what they're doing is instituting a people analytics platform to enable them to search now not just within the one agency that has responsibility for this task, but across the whole of the health ministry and its 110,000 employees to find the people more quickly to allow them to staff those teams and do a better job of examining devices. This is not just, though, about looking for credentialed expertise, like who has the right medical degree or public health degree. It's also about getting boots on the ground, getting at what people's experiences are and what they know. So platforms like Noveck, the social network for the Latin American and Spanish-speaking world that tries to track, again, the experiences and passions of civil servants. Or in our environmental ministry, the project marketplace that is not about targeting people on the basis of their credentials, but rather posting projects and inviting people across the whole ministry to collaborate on them as a way to improve professional development and improve the outcomes of those projects. The World Bank, just this year, unveiled its new Skill Finder platform. 27,000 employees, alumni, and consultants now all in a common place where they can hopefully do a better job of targeting that expertise to achieve the goal, which is to reduce poverty, right? So, but a platform by itself isn't going to work. So what do is they open up just last month a help desk so that you can call the help desk and find a broker who's going to help you target and find the people with the right experience, the person who's put in a well in a particular country or knows about groundwater in another country to help you solve the problem that you're facing. So let me just wrap up. I'm going to, by talking a little bit about two or three examples of the ways that we're beginning to do this with citizens. That's more government, that's Canada, that's New York. And if you want, and I'll just put in a plug for for all the examples that I don't get to talk about today, we've put some of them up online on the Smarter State website, and also here we'll give out some stuff about this. But we're beginning to be able to do this kind of audience segmentation also for citizens. Right, so there's the AgriVivo platform that is the expert network now for agricultural experts around the world, growing out from universities into industry, but allowing us to tap into that credentialed expertise, but also lastly, into that boots on the ground know-how. Bill Gates in his New Year's letter that he and his wife put out every year said, we're going to invest this year in the creation of a global database of citizen expertise to tackle the problem of global poverty. And we're seeing, concrete evidence of how to do this in practice. In the US, we have 1,400 communities on the platform called PulsePoint. What PulsePoint does is target a single skill, my ability to perform CPR, so that when someone, God forbid, has a heart attack and the 999 call comes in, the geolocated text message comes to me and says, there's someone near me having a heart attack, and I can rush to their aid and perform bystander CPR. What does that look like? Well, when government performs the service in California of delivering emergency first response, these are the medics and the fire departments, et cetera, who can provide that service. This is what that coverage looks like when citizens get involved in the co-delivery of that service. And now, of course, this idea has come to London 4 months ago with the launch of Good Sam, provided by the London Air Ambulance Service, that is helping us to target specific know-how. So what I'm hoping we're going to talk about now in our conversation is the strategies for how we get from here to there. There are a lot of things we need to do in terms of creating the legal frameworks that allow us to do this, both getting rid of laws that get in the way and creating the platforms, whether they're systems of credentials or whether they are new kinds of expert networks that are actually allowing us to make expertise more findable and searchable. So let me just, I want to end, because we're going to talk about a lot of this, I think, in the discussion. Let me just end by saying fundamentally what this is about is not just changing how we make decisions and solve problems by enabling us to target what people know and can do. It's ultimately about transforming our conception of citizenship, right? From one in which citizens are passive watchers of those who govern, who can do no more than share their opinion and thereby vote the bums out of office, to one in which we are co-participants and active participants. We're active participants in that process. Jürgen Habermas, the great father of participatory and deliberative democracy, has said has been complaining of late that the big challenge is that in Europe we don't build enough legitimacy by engaging citizens. We see this dichotomy between technocracy, right, good outcomes that are produced by civil servants, and legitimate participatory processes where citizens are engaged. The challenge is that he sees this antinomy, this thing, this difference between what citizens can do, which is what they feel, asking people what they feel, and successful outcomes in policymaking. Instead, technology helps us to combine these two. We can have both legitimacy and effectiveness when we use tools to allow us to target the expertise that makes engagement productive as well as legitimate. So let me stop with that, and I'll come back up here.
Great, thank you so much, Beth. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you.
Let me turn this off.